There are moments in life when you're not held back by the world, you're held back by something inside your own mind. And the most shocking part, it's not laziness, it's not weakness, it's not lack of motivation. Sometimes, the very thing that is keeping you stuck is the same thing that once kept you alive. Today, I want to show you something most people never realize. Trauma doesn't just affect your past. It trains your brain to stay trapped in the same emotional room forever. And once you understand how, you'll never look at your struggles the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because by the time we finish, you will see the exact doorway out of that room, a doorway that has been hidden in plain sight. When most people think about trauma, they imagine a painful event, a moment of shock, loss, fear, or helplessness. But the real impact of trauma isn't in the moment itself, it's in what happens after. Trauma changes the operating system of the brain. It doesn't just leave a memory. It leaves a manual that teaches your mind how to respond to the world from that point forward. Here's the most important truth. The brain's #1 job is survival, not happiness. And trauma forces the brain to prioritize survival at all costs, even when the danger has passed. When a traumatic experience hits you, your brain flips a switch. It activates the amygdala, the alarm center, and floods your body with stress hormones. But the deeper effect is what happens inside your neural pathways. Your brain learns to expect threats. It learns to overreact to danger. It learns to scan for what might go wrong. And because the brain is adaptive, it begins to build neural circuits that support these survival patterns. Instead of investing energy in creativity, joy, confidence, or long-term goals, your brain invests energy in protection. Your mind is not malfunctioning. It's following the programming trauma created. The brain rewires itself to assume safety comes first. Everything else is optional. But here's the irony. The same wiring that kept you alive can stop you from living. Because if the brain stays locked in survival mode, it limits your world. It pushes away risks, challenges, relationships, and possibilities, not out of fear, but out of habit. Trauma teaches the brain to choose the predictable even when the predictable is painful. The good news is that trauma's wiring is not permanent. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, means that new patterns can replace old ones. Through awareness, regulation, and intentional action, the brain can learn that the world is no longer a battlefield. And when that shift happens, survival mode begins to dissolve, making space for growth, joy, and finally happiness. To the nervous system, predictability equals safety. And trauma trains the body to choose the familiar, even when the familiar hurts. Here's why. When something traumatic happens, the body enters a protective state: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. This state is intense, overwhelming, and frightening, but it is also incredibly energetic. Stress chemicals, like cortisol and adrenaline, flood the system, keeping you hyper-alert and ready to react. Over time, the body becomes accustomed to this heightened state. It begins to confuse the feeling of stress with the feeling of being prepared. So even when life improves, your body may unconsciously seek out situations, relationships, and emotional patterns that match the internal state you're used to. It's not that you want pain, it's that your system recognizes it. The nervous system gets addicted to the chemical cocktail of survival. Stress becomes a baseline. Adrenaline becomes a companion. Pain becomes a pattern that the body knows how to navigate. The unknown, on the other hand, even if it's beautiful, feels dangerous. Imagine living in darkness for years. Suddenly someone opens the door to light. The light isn't harmful, but it hurts your eyes. Your instinct is to turn back into the darkness, not because it's better, but because it's familiar. Trauma works the same way. The body gravitates toward what it understands. It prefers the discomfort it can predict over the comfort it cannot trust. This is why healing is not just emotional, it is biological. You are retraining your nervous system to tolerate safety, peace, love, and joy, things it may not have felt consistently for years. But once the nervous system learns that calm is not a threat, and that peace does not mean danger is coming, everything begins to change. Because the moment your body stops chasing familiar pain, it becomes free to pursue unfamiliar, but wonderful possibilities. Unresolved trauma doesn't just live in memories, it lives in the mechanisms your brain uses to make decisions. When the brain has been shaped by past pain, it does something completely logical but deeply limiting. It bases present decisions on old danger. This means the brain is not evaluating what is happening now, it is trying to prevent what happened before from happening again. This creates a powerful distortion in the decision-making system. And because the brain is designed to protect you, it chooses the safest option, or what looks like safety. But these safe choices are often the same choices that keep you stuck. Trauma hijacks decision-making in 3 major ways. The traumatized brain overestimates danger and underestimates capability. So instead of choosing growth, it chooses retreat. Instead of trying something new, it clings to what feels secure. Instead of saying yes to opportunity, it avoids anything uncertain. Avoidance isn't laziness. It's protection. If something resembles an old wound, brain automatically pushes you away from it. Not because you can't handle it, but because your nervous system believes it's saving your life. Self-sabotage is not a flaw, it's a safety mechanism. If the brain believes success could lead to exposure, loss, or disappointment, it will unconsciously destroy the opportunity before it grows. Why? Because trauma has programmed the brain to choose the pain it knows instead of the possibility it doesn't. Unresolved trauma turns the mind into a guardian that never stands down. But once you understand how your decisions are being shaped, you reclaim the ability to choose intentionally, not defensively. One of the most powerful yet hidden effects of trauma is this. The brain cannot distinguish between what protects you and what limits you. To the traumatized mind, anything that reduces emotional risk feels like safety, even if it costs you opportunities, connection, and personal freedom. Trauma teaches the brain that the world is dangerous, unpredictable, and full of threats. So even when something good appears, a kind person, a healthy opportunity, a new beginning, the brain responds with suspicion. To someone without trauma, these thoughts seem unnecessary. To someone with trauma, they feel like wisdom. This is how limitation becomes disguised as protection. And because the brain prioritizes safety, it blocks anything that might challenge the old survival template, even if it could lead to growth. This confusion affects every part of life. You hold back, detach, or push people away because vulnerability feels dangerous. You avoid opportunities, sabotage your progress, or stay in your comfort zone because failure feels catastrophic. You hesitate, overthink, or freeze because change feels like stepping into the unknown. The brain isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to shield you. But the shield becomes a wall between you and the life you want. Healing begins the moment you recognize that your mind is not limiting you out of malice. It's limiting you out of loyalty to an outdated version of you. When you teach your brain that safety and limitation are not the same, the wall begins to crack, and through those cracks, the first light of growth enters. Awareness is the doorway that turns a dark room into a navigable space. It doesn't instantly remove the walls, but it reveals that you're not trapped by destiny. You're trapped by wiring. The sensation of being stuck is not evidence of character flaws, it's a reflection of the brain doing exactly what it was trained to do after trauma: protect you. This protection becomes a pattern, and patterns running in the subconscious feel like fate when you aren't aware of them. Awareness is what breaks this illusion. When you recognize that your reactions, fears, and limitations are neurological rather than personal, everything shifts. Awareness doesn't erase trauma, but it disarms it. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer controlled by it. The brain's programming stops operating in the dark. You begin to interrupt automatic reactions, question old beliefs, and understand your emotional triggers. Neuroscience proves that awareness activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, decision-making, and regulation. When this part of the brain turns on, survival mode loosens its grip. It transforms trauma from a prison into a puzzle, one that can be understood, rewired, and healed. Awareness doesn't heal everything, but nothing can heal without it. Once trauma has created patterns of fear, avoidance, or overprotection, the brain must be shown gently and consistently that the world no longer requires those survival responses. Healing doesn't happen through one breakthrough moment. It happens through repetition, the same way trauma shaped the brain in the first place. Every time you do something safe that your traumatized brain insists is dangerous, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one. The nervous system doesn't trust change instantly. It learns through repetition. Think of it like training a scared animal. You don't overwhelm it. You show it slowly and gently that the environment is safe. The same is true for the inner self. Consistent actions signal to the brain. As the brain learns safety, something beautiful happens. Survival mode softens and possibility opens. This shift is not magical. It is mechanical. It is the brain reorganizing itself based on the signals you repeatedly send. Every calm breath, every honest conversation, every boundary, every brave step becomes a vote for a new identity.